All right, so welcome to New Agent Training Part 2 of Working with Buyers. So we left off last time of walking through someone through a buyer consultation, and then now we have shown them some properties. And in this case, we have actually found, a property that we want to start running some comps on. So this property is 2805 Falls River Avenue in Raleigh. So if you live there, it's in that Falls River subdivision. And you have to be careful when you're running comps in this neighborhood, mainly because you've got Falls River and you have Bedford, which are similar, but kind of different, right? So you have to be a little careful to know which neighborhood we're really going to be running some comps on. So we'll do that in just a minute. We'll start looking at that property. I'm just going to try to do some basic comps just as a new agent to get you started, so you know kind of what that looks like. I am not an agent that does a lot of adjustments. I like to look at it from a comp summary standpoint and try to see if my comparable is average for that neighborhood based on my parameters, if I am kind of low, or if I'm on the high end of comps in that area using my criteria. So we'll look at that in just a second. In fact, I need to get myself out of here so that we can go over to Paragon. Give me 2 seconds. Y'all, me and technology sometimes. All right, here we go. Here we go. Now we're cooking with gas. All right, so I went ahead and logged into the site. And also, before we really get started there too, I do want to acclimate some of our newer agents as well to what you're kind of looking at here too. MLS system is very, very powerful. Lots of information that you can find. Also keep in mind too, you have your MLS documents where you can get your coming soon docs. And you also have a lot of places here where you can get some information on the market too, like Info Sparks, and some other information around the market. All right, so let's go ahead and look at this property. And what I normally like to do is put the property in it first. It's 2805 Falls River. Yeah, gosh, y'all, is it still active? Still active. Kind of shocked in some ways, but if you did your homework and actually looked at this property, you could probably see some of the reasons why, and we'll do that in just a second. All right, so I'm going to make a few little notes. Let me let a few people into the room, just so when I'm running my comps, I've got some of the details of the home and the neighborhood. So again, I'm going to make a note here, right? It's the Bedford side at Falls River. That's, if you just ran it just Falls River, you may get some different comps. So we're going to try to be very specific. 0.1 acres. If you were here with me, you would see I have actually a little piece of paper beside me. And I'm going to write some of the details down for my comps. I'm going to look at square foot, 1915 square footage, 4 beds, 2.5 baths. And then I'm also going to write down year built, 2005. The reason why I write that down is commonly when running comps, year can be a big differentiator, because I'm not necessarily going to compare a home built in 2005 to one that was just built in 2021. And there's a lot of neighborhoods where there is some backfill there. So you just have to be super, super careful. All right, other than that, that's kind of the basic information that I really need. One thing else I like to do is to pay attention to some of these little icons I have here as well. So let's look at the history of this property, because sometimes that can be super important if there's been some price reductions or if there's some weird things going on here. But no, it just went active on October 5th. Crazy, right? Still active at 425. So it's listed currently where it started. There have been no price reductions. And again, those days on market are 58, which is an eternity in our marketplace. I also usually like to go to documents to see if I have disclosures or any other information there that may be helpful for me as I'm trying to decide, you know, maybe what would be a fair price to offer for this home. All right, let's look and see if we are no rep all the way down the road. Yeah, we are no rep down the road. So you're seeing more of this on disclosures. And it can make things a little bit more challenging, right? Because you don't know age of systems. And some of that can be super important when you're looking at comps. Like if a home has had a total renovation, I went into one yesterday afternoon that I think I've got clients writing an offer on. New roof, new plumbing underneath the house, new HVAC, totally remodeled inside. It's an older home. So those system ages may be important for me when I'm really looking at comps. But I will say there's a lot of firms out there that do kind of recommend that to their agents to do no representation all the way down. You hate it when you see it because it means very little information for you and your seller. But note, if you write something here and you say yes or no, and you really don't know, no rep is probably the right answer. And in this case, it looks like it is a rental, which it's probably more appropriate for them to write no representation than to draw a line in the sand and say, nope, we don't have any leaks. They may not know. Okay, so that doesn't give us a ton of information to prove helpful. So then the next thing I like to do is really kind of look at the photos. Now, obviously, if I'm writing an offer on this property, hopefully I've been able to get inside of it, which would mean I would have a lot more information on the condition of the home. But remember, as we've gone along on some of our trainings, we have talked about kind of the 3 keys: location, price, which we're trying to establish, and condition. So photos and my walkthrough help me establish what is the condition of this home. And to me, that is integral on trying to figure out really what is the appropriate price. Again, is my subject property closer to some of the lower end comps or some of the higher end comps? And a lot of that is based on the condition of the home. All right, so let's flip around. I think we're starting to see, right, why maybe it's still on the market. There's a renter in place, so access is probably a little more challenging than a vacant home or where someone's traditionally living. A tenant is not nearly as motivated to sell a property as a homeowner, so keep that in mind. But it looks like everything's kind of, you know, probably builder grade and probably very similar to when they purchased the home. Like I think I saw even some linoleum in that laundry room. Man, we could use this. Remember these photos next week when we're talking about working with sellers, right? Some basic things. Let's open up some windows, get some things off the countertops. Really hard to tell the condition. Carpet. I mean, it doesn't look terrible, right? I mean, they're terrible photos. But the inside of the house just looks, it's kind of average, maybe below average, if the neighborhood has some updates, which a good portion of these homes in Bedford really do. All right, detached garage, small yard, and then we're going to get into some of the amenities. So I hope that makes sense, right? We're using some of the photos, or if I had walked through the home, some knowledge there to help me decide, is this home lower, about average, or if it's on the higher end of the comps. All right, so I'm going to keep this subject property open so I can always refer back to it if I need to. And then I'm going to pop up a new search. I'm going to fill in now my criteria to see if I can find some homes that are similar. Now, there's a couple of different ways we can do it. I'm going to just do a basic subdivision search here. Now, you could do it through mapping, and that would be like to draw a pin and then just do like a circular or Paragon. I I don't know, I think it's parallelogram or whatever around the area that you want to use for your comps. Some neighborhoods you have mapping may be a little bit better, but we're going to keep it general today. I'm going to do active, contingent, sold, and pending. I may just do a coming soon too, just to see. And I'm going to hit save. So that is my status that I'm going to use. Again, I'm going to go ahead and pop down here to the subdivision, and I'm going to say Bedford at Falls River. To note, there is another Bedford that's off of Creedmoor Road in Raleigh too, so don't make that mistake. All right. Sometimes I will say there'll be like a Bedford in Lee County, or there's a lot of some similarities with the names. So sometimes you have to even add a city or zip code to make sure you're in the right spot. This should work. All right, property type. There is some condos or some townhomes that are in Bedford. So I want to eliminate those. We're just going to do detached homes. Save. Square footage. So this is a great way to take this 905 down, and I actually need to put my date in too. So I like to normally do about 500 square feet below and 500 above. So that's going to roughly take me to 1,500 to 2,500 square feet. Drop me way down, right? Took me from 900 to 211. And let me change my closing date. I just want to go 6 months back. All right. And just like that, we went from 900 to 11 comps, which is actually pretty daggone good, because I bet you some of them are pending too. If I wanted to go further, probably my next step would be year built. But all of those homes were relatively built around the same time. So if I did 2000 to 2010, it may not change it. It doesn't change it at all. Now, some of you may say, well, what about bedrooms? That if I had still 40, comps, then that may be something that I would use, or acreage, because sometimes that can really vary in a neighborhood. But this is definitely a planned urban development. So a lot of those things are going to be fairly similar. I kind of like having 11 comps, so I think we'll be in good shape there. All right. Yeah. Ooh, it's actually kind of perfect, right? We have 5 that are closed, and we have essentially, 5 that are pending, which will be really great information for us as well. So if you look, my screen may look a little different from how you have it set up. I have customized how I want this grid to look with the information that I feel like is important to me. So if it looks different, don't be.
I just want to interrupt you for a second. We're not seeing your screen. All right.
So what we could do is just look at a comp summary for now. But let's go ahead and look at these properties and just double check to make sure, would these be comps that I would use for the subject property? I'm going to say right off the gate, it looks very similar, right? Let's look at some photos just really quick. You'll get really probably pretty fast at this. All right. I mean, it's fairly similar, right? I mean, this home has been neutralized with paint. It's been staged, so don't necessarily get wowed with some of that. It's fairly similar, although I would say the head of the day, it's funny. From a condition standpoint, I think ours is probably going to be a little bit on the lower side. This one I think is still worth using as a comp because it's so damn similar. But this one, the condition may be a little bit better. So I'm going to make a little note to myself and say 11011 Connolly
Pam,
Lane. I'm going to put an arrow up, meaning that it's a little bit better than my property. I'm going to go ahead and check the box though.
Pam,
and this checking, I'll show you later why that's significant. Look, another one that looks very, very similar, right? Very similar to the one we just looked at. I think we can all agree there. I think that was tile. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and check that box too. So the last one was 375, 320, and then 375. Oh my gosh, can you guys not see my screen? Just got a text. Can you guys see my screen? Can some, no? Okay. Ah, thank you for the heads up, Joanna. Oh, and I didn't see the text message. Let me see if I can share it. I'm sorry, guys. I was going through all this stuff. Can you see it now?
Yes, we're good.
I think we can. Let me look in my chat box. Perfect. Yay. I'm sorry about that. All right. So just the other two, they look very, very similar. So we checked that one. We're checking this one. And let's go to the next one. All right. This one, so square foot, all the things that we put in our criteria seem to be similar. Look through the photos really quick just to see. Right. This one looks a little bit nicer, right? I am going to go ahead and check it as a decent comp. Obviously, they don't look exactly the same, but they're pretty similar. But I'm going to say, again, and make a little note, 44, 21, all points is a little better than ours. I got a feeling ours is going to be on the low end of the comps, right? Let's just look real quick for the sake of time, because I got to leave right at 12 today. Oh, this is our subject property. So of course we're going to check that box. I mean, it's really nice, right? I mean, this one definitely, the condition is a lot better than ours. The kitchen's way updated. It looks like this is actually hardwood floors where the others may be laminate. I mean, the bathroom's even been remodeled too, right? So this one's going to be a comp I would use just because of the neighborhood, but we're starting to get into some that are definitely better than what our subject property is. Yeah, 2-story in the living room there. Oh, wow. Sold. I would take that one, right? Oh, that looks so, so nice. It's really starting to make our house look a little, a little sad. All right. Yeah, bigger porch. I hope this isn't boring, you guys. It's just the mental, like, am I including or not? This one's interesting, 409 to 450. Okay. All right, I think that we're out of our ballpark. I mean, that doesn't look anything. It's definitely in the more, there's almost like an estate area of Bedford that when you're there, it's remarkably different. So I'm not even going to include those last few. And obviously the ones at the tail end of the ones I even included are still definitely higher end than what the product is that we're looking at. So I'm going to hit checked. And so what that did was take those last few off, and now it has just included these 7 that I thought were appropriate for comps. So now I'm going to look here and I'm going to go down, and this is how I do it. Now, there's a lot of programs that you can purchase and buy that will help you do these fancy dancy summaries or CMAs. But what I have found, and Gina, I know you're on here, correct me if I'm wrong, sometimes simple is better because people can understand it. You get something that's really complicated, it may look beautiful, but unless you can really deliver what all that is trying to say, I think it's too much fluff. I'd much rather have something like this that I can explain easily, and I can send them a link with all those listings that I just showed. So not only are they seeing the summary, but they're also seeing, what I looked at from a condition standpoint as well. I know Tina called. This is what she used when she delivered CMAs to her clients as well. So keep it simple. All right, so just looking at some of this too. All right, so our days on market is really standing out on our property. If we're looking here too, days on market is typically in this neighborhood, it's very low, right? This is, Olive Wake County is very popular, but this is one of those neighborhoods that normally goes. So what's wrong with it? What is wrong with it? And I have a sneaky suspicion, right? And you guys probably do too. Price, condition, location. All of these have the same similar location, right? So we're looking at two things that are probably a little off on this one. Price, right? And possibly some on the condition side as well. So just looking at it from a price per square foot, which is a basic way of doing it, but sometimes can give you a great baseline, we're priced at $222 per square foot, where the ones that have sold, they've sold significantly less. This one was priced at $177, sold for $194. This one was priced at $182 and sold for higher. So right out of the gate, I will tell you, I think this house is way overpriced. And unfortunately, the listing agent was probably talked into taking it at a higher price than what even that market could justify. And it's an indication, right, that even in a hot market, you cannot overprice a home, because if you do that, right, if you do it, then you run the risk of sitting on the market for 60 days and then people like us having a conversation of what's wrong with it, price and condition. So if I were to make an offer on this one, I'm going to go to the comps, especially after it's been sitting on the market for 2 months. In a competitive market, if this was multiple offers, we'd be having a totally different conversation. We would be using comps in that way to tell people of, hey, this is where ballpark it may appraise at, and this is what you may be responsible to bringing extra to the closing table. But that's not the conversation we're having here. In this certain circumstance, I think if I were to write an offer, I would not recommend writing it at asking. I would recommend trying to get as much off this as humanly possible. Even these pending ones down here, we don't know what it will close for quite yet, but they sold really quickly. And so I imagine they're probably going to sell for higher than what they were listed at too. So that means this price per square foot will go up on these, on the closed. But again, they missed the mark, right? They missed the mark. And obviously the market is telling them that they're overpriced. So even just looking at comps, I think you could justify, especially because condition too, right? 191, I would use one of the lower closed comps to give me a price there. And I don't have my calculator with me quite this yet. Go ahead, Gina, go ahead and unmute and say something, please.
Okay, so I'm getting ready to go to my coaching call with Jen Schiff, so I can't stay on, but I don't know.
Can anyone hear Gina?
Can you guys hear me?
Oh, there you are. There you are. I hear you now.
Okay. So what I was going to say is I'm getting ready to jump on my coaching call with Jen Schiff, but the one that is at 4429 All Points Way is the same floor plan as the subject property, but and they have it listed at the same dollars per square foot, and that one sold in 3 days. If you notice, that one had like marble or some high-end countertops in the kitchen, just the entire feel of the property completely different. So in just looking, in the pictures obviously tell a completely different story than what the one, even the color of the cabinets is more desirable, even though they're not the white painted. So some of those things are also things to pay attention to, because they have a huge impact on what a buyer is willing to pay for a property. And also that property, and going back and looking at the history, has been a rental since 2007. And that just, they obviously, it has original laminate countertops. They haven't invested money in it. And so likely when you walk through it, it has a completely different feeling. This one feels like it's updated, ready to move into, and buyers are just simply willing to pay for that. But yeah,
Absolutely.
if you miss the mark on the pricing, then you are going to be punished by this marketplace. I mean,
Yeah.
it just is what it is. And so
Right.
um,
Yeah.
if I was going to be representing a buyer who wanted to purchase this property, I actually would likely be going in under 400,
Mhm.
even though the comps wouldn't necessarily justify that lower price point, but just the psychology of knowing that they've been on the market for 2 months,
Yep.
they likely have gotten some low offers in the beginning. And at this point, they may not, and they may now be ready. And a lot of times investor clients have an attitude of, well, I don't want to drop the price because then I'm only going to get lower offers. I haven't even gotten an offer. So that would at least read the temperature of the seller, how serious they are about selling. I
Yeah.
mean, the backyard is completely different. And I would really be hammering that one with the listing agent, as you know, there's at
Yeah.
least $30,000 worth of differential, if not more, in just the condition.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with
Yeah,
you. I think it does just really reiterates condition is a huge part of all this. You're right. Exact same floor plan, but what a big difference between those two homes. And maybe
yeah,
just from a comp standpoint, that number may have looked right, but obviously, condition is a huge part of it. So I'm with you.
exactly.
There's an opportunity
Yeah.
here to maybe get a good
There
price.
is. But unfortunately, with them saying that they're no longer allowing, investors in the neighborhood,
Yeah.
their target audience is a buyer, and likely in this price range, you're more first time home buyer who doesn't necessarily have the cash to outlay in it, and the floor plan being just 4 bedrooms versus 3 and a bonus, even with it having a first floor master, it's just anyway.
Yeah.
So that's all I want to say before I
Love it.
jumped off. But
Love it.
thank
Love
you
it.
so much for all that you're doing with this. It's awesome.
Well,
So
thank you,
you
Gina. I
guys are
appreciate
also
it.
blessed to have this amazing woman teaching you. So
Oh,
enjoy. All
thank
right.
you. Thanks
Bye.
for hopping on. Thanks for
Okay.
she's I mean, y'all, that's a veteran right there. So listen to her for sure. But it really comes back down to the end: price, condition, location. Your price can be good. You can be aggressive with it, but if you do that, you better make sure that condition is nice and tight. So I think that was probably a really great way to end that part there too. So Gina's right on with it. I try to see if I can get at least below 400,000 on this one. So there could be a possibility to hop in there and snag one. All right, so let's get on with some of the other things we want to talk about today too. Um, I want to look at an inspection report and do that. So we've got 30 minutes to cover some of those. I feel like I need maybe one more day on working with buyers. All right, so writing an offer, standard offer versus a multiple offer. Again, we were just talking about a standard offer. So with that, it's been on the market for a couple months. I think we could probably get something off. But a multiple offer is going to be a totally different situation, right? When you're writing the offer too, I like to normally sit down with people, or before we leave that house, if I feel like we're going to write an offer, and let's go ahead and start establishing what we think we're going to put forth. I normally like to have comps with me if it's somebody that's really hot and I feel like they're going to make an offer pretty quick. And then we're going to also talk about due diligence and earnest monies. So in a non-multiple offer situation, when we were in normal times, DD and EM typically equaled about 1% of the purchase price. So if we were looking at a $350,000 home, we may have 2,000 in earnest or due diligence money and maybe 1,500 in earnest money. Now we are seeing due diligence be the very next number sellers look at. If we have two offers that are exactly the same, but one has a higher due diligence, we may take that one. We've actually seen due diligence help people win offers that were not as high as another one because it was guaranteed money to that seller. that no matter what, if someone walked away, they at least would be able to capture this amount of money. I have lost deals on not being able to get my people up on due diligence quite enough. All of this starts though by really being in great communication with the listing agent when you can to determine, if there's something that they're looking for in particular, like maybe a closing date. I know Jessica McMillan was on this call, or she's still on the call. And, a date was important to her seller because he was trying to purchase a new home construction. So he may have been willing to overlook a little bit of, due diligence or purchase price in order to hit a date. Probably not, Jessica, but, it could happen. So again, I'm going to talk about DD, earnest money, and why I wrote how delivered is there is some boxes on that contract that talk about, is it going to be a wire? Is it going to be a check? Is it going to be cash? And that's important to talk about because most people don't walk around with checkbooks anymore. And wiring money can be a little nervous for people. So go ahead and have that little conversation too on how you're going to deliver those funds, because due diligence is expected at the time of contract. So it's all about setting expectations for your clients. Let them know the moment we go under contract, I need to figure out how to get due diligence to the seller, and I need to figure out how to get earnest money to the escrow agent. So we'll also talk about dates, due diligence dates, and closing dates. In my market in Wilmington, I normally like to get about 3 weeks if I can in due diligence, because that allows me enough time to do my inspections. And it also typically allows me enough time to get the appraisal back. Sometimes here for us, if I try to shorten a date, like to 2 weeks, things I've run into problems with is title work not being completed and appraisals not being back. And remember, a listing agent or seller, they do not have to necessarily extend your due diligence period. So, but it can sometimes be the thing that helps you win a deal. So you have to balance that out a little bit. If you're paying over appraisal anyway, who cares, right? Just make it tight. I can get an inspection done in probably 2 days and get that taken care of. All right. So it just depends on who your client is. Again, just miscellaneous, who's going to be the escrow agent or who's going to be the closing attorney. If we're asking for a warranty, I like them, but in this market, it's hard to get them in closing costs. Good luck to you trying to get some closing costs through if your buyer really needs it. Just notice that the seller is just going to take it right off the top of the purchase price. All right, writing an offer too. Again, I want to mention this is super important to make sure that you're really explaining the due diligence process, because if they don't understand that and they end up terminating a contract, they get angry at you because they're losing that due diligence money. So just make sure they're aware of that. Okay. Again, some of the initial negotiations as a buyer's agent, you're going to be the one that's writing up the contract. But I would reach out to the listing agent, as I mentioned before, to find out what is really important to the seller. It may surprise you sometimes. They've got a date they're trying to hit, or they're worried about this, they're worried about that. When I've had listings, I've been shocked sometimes that a buyer's agent will never even call me and they'll just submit an offer. And I'm like, on a multiple offer, I'm always looking at the ones that have been proactive, been great to communicate with, because as much as I want to find the right buyer, I also want the right buyer's agent through this situation too. Love letters. Those are, they've kind of fallen out of favor. Some people still do them. I will say NAR really discourages them. And I think EXP's stance on them is kind of negative right now too, because people are really violating fair housing laws with them by showing their family, all these pictures and things like that too. Remember, familial status is a protected class as well. That's probably the one that's violated the most at this point. What I think we want to try to do though, is we're trying to tell a little bit to the seller and to the listing agent of how qualified, right? How good my buyers are going to be through this transaction. That I think you can absolutely do. So what I normally do in my presentation email, so the email that I send to the listing agent with my offer, I always try to, if there's something that's unique and cool about them, I always try to pull that out of the contract. Like, hey, listing agent, I just want to reiterate how great my clients are. So as you'll notice from the contract, they are putting down 60% on this property. You'll also note their pre-approval letter is much higher than what this home is priced at, showing again, they're putting a good amount down and they're also pre-approved for more. And so I don't anticipate any issues with them. They're using a local lender. I've called and talked to the lender, and I feel very strong that they're good to go. Oh, and by the way, my local lender is typically really great on appraisals. She's fast and she's aggressive. And hey, I'll get my lender to call you too, just again to reiterate how great my clients are. Those types of things can stand out. And that's what your listing agent cares about. How qualified are these people? Are they really great buyers? Highlight the hell out of them, right? It's less about how many kids and what their dog has. Can these people close the loan? If they can, make sure that you pump that up as an agent. Also, make sure you always include a pre-approval or pre-qualification letter, whichever one you have, the offer, any addendums, and disclosures. I also usually mention a little bit about myself. So I'll say, I've been a licensed agent since 2013. I pride myself on being easy to work with, and I'm always solution oriented. So I'm excited about presenting this offer to you. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out, and I look forward to working with you to close this deal, because I want them to know a little bit about me too if they don't know. And I think there's a part of that on selling myself. Again, if offers are the same, how am I going to stand out? That's part of this whole process. All right, so after you've submitted, and maybe you're going back and forth on the terms of this contract, maybe we're still trying to figure out what that price looks like, or maybe we're negotiating on due diligence. Negotiating can be back and forth in a lot of different ways: email, text messages, phone calls. I kind of like emails because there's documentation with that. A telephone call is not documentable. Text messages are a little bit better, so keep that in mind. I say here, letting the other agent feel like they have won a little bit too. Sometimes negotiations can be a little bit contentious. And I find that sometimes we have to give our agents some tips on how they can sell this solution to their client too. You guys know what I mean. What's their win in this? If there is a little bit of a win, then that may help them, work and negotiate with their client too. I find that a lot of agents are really super receptive to that too, All right. After everything is verbally, figured out, all those terms, the buyer's agent is typically the one to make that edit to the initial offer. And then they'll send that corrected version with their client's initials and signatures to the listing agent so they can get the seller's signatures. That final document should be clean, right? Should have all the negotiated terms on it. All right, we'll look at contracts during contract week 2. So we'll get into the weeds with the offer to purchase. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about this due diligence process, right? And then we talk a ton about inspections. But remember, I said during my due diligence period, I want to make sure that I get my appraisal back. So this is what I mean by mortgage. During the due diligence process, it is also important for the buyer to be hyper, aggressive and being really good about whatever the lender is asking of them, delivering documents, signing things, whatever they need to do in order to make sure that we're tracking towards clear to close, close to the end of due diligence. Maybe not all the way, but a lot of those mile markers, like conditional approval. So they're approved, they're good. Now maybe they have to just finish the details on the property, like through appraisal, right? Or they're approved, but they have to get a little bit more documentation in. Inspections. So during due diligence period, obviously this is the bulk of what we talk a ton about. We're going to do a general home inspection, make sure the house looks great. If it has a well and septic, certainly one to consider, highly recommend. Radon, depends on where you are in the country, but it is the second leading cause of lung cancer. So for $100, $150 to get a little peace of mind there is probably a really great idea. Termites, I don't think you should sell a house that's a townhouse or a single family home without doing the termite inspection. Really, I would almost pay the 75 bucks myself because I have run into termites so much here recently. Other inspections could be like HVAC, plumbing, electrical. You know, you may do a full inspection and realize you've got some messes. And I'm actually going to show you guys an example of an inspection report I had here recently. Professional services, that document really guides you on some of the other inspections and things that you will be completing potentially during the due diligence process. All right, let's talk about in theory repair negotiations. And again, I'll show you an example of one. So typically, I really highly recommend you to spend the time on the systems and what is really important. Think about what's, what's going to be expensive. And that's really systems, like your HVACs, your roof, a whole electrical panel that needs to be, to be replaced. People will get caught up in all the little stuff in a home inspection, and that can be, I think, a miss. So I try to set it up right from the start when I'm setting up the appointment for the home inspection. It's like, so when you get the report back, it's going to look like the house is falling down. It's their job. It's their job to find any little thing that may be a potential red flag. But what I'm going to tell you that in my experience is that we need to spend time on the things that are the most important. If we can fight hard on those, then we normally have a great opportunity to get either a credit or maybe get some of the more important things fixed. If we fixate on, a screw loose here and there, my experience is we won't get nearly as much, because then we can say, hey, we tried to be realistic in what we were asking for. So your responsibility and when you're asking for repairs negotiations is to be super clear in your request. This is a common problem. If you just follow the home inspection report and say, have that system evaluated, then that may be what they do, but you're not really asking them to repair or replace anything. So be clear on what your expectations are in your request. Quotes, I'm a huge fan of. If I'm going to ask you for a $10,000 credit, I better show you where I'm getting that number from. So I do include quotes when I can. And again, my example will have that. A DDRA, or due diligence request addendum, is really where you're asking for specific repairs to be done. I'll show an example of that. An agreement to amend is, hey, in lieu of this repair, I'm just asking you for credit towards closing cost. You can have a variation of both. Maybe I'm asking you to repair a couple of things, and then I'm asking for a credit for the rest of the important items. All right, so let me escape out of here. I want to make sure you guys can see my screen. All right, are we good? Can you guys still see my screen okay? If you can't, just unmute and tell me, because this is going to be super important. Okay. So this is a home I just closed not too long ago, and it had a lot of issues. So I thought it was a good opportunity to show you. This is the company that I use at the coast. I think they're really great, but there's a lot of awesome inspectors in the Raleigh area too. What I wanted to show you just on this front page here is there's a way for you to build out some repair lists using some of their system called Home Gauge. Again, a lot of inspectors use that too. And so I could send the whole report to the agent, and then I could share a repair request to isolating those things that I'm asking them to repair. It makes it nice, neat, and really clear. All right, so let's just look at this really briefly. Because what I love about how they do their reports, and again, there's wherever your market is, there's variations of this. So you'll see 23 are just maintenance, 51 are recommended. That's a lot. And there's 3 that are urgent or safety concerns. So remember what I said. I set the expectation right up the front that we are going to focus our time and energy really on the urgent or safety concerns. And then there may be a few things here that I'm looking at, like, it may not be imminent, but it's, it's getting close there too. These items, these are FYI. These are not going to be on my inspection request. Okay. All right. Let me go through. All right. So then I'm getting into some photos and things. Again, I don't care anything about these cracks in the driveway. Actually, let me go. Let's just look here at our urgent matters. And these really aren't all that urgent, right? There's smoke detectors, they're like $10. And then there is a receptacle over the tub. I did want to show you, there's some mold. There were some deal killers in here, but we did get through this deal. I am pleased to say. The roof was newer, but it did have some scuffs. We kind of let some of that go. Some of this stuff, a lot of the stuff we kind of let go, right? Just kind of tick-tacky things. Lights burn out, I'm sure. All right, but now we're starting to see a story here. We're starting to see a little bit of mold or bacterial growth, fungal growth in a couple of areas. You see it right here too. And then here we go. This was kind of our thing, right? Our big item that we were like, not loving that. So we had some fungal growth on the floor joists. And most of you that haven't done a lot of mold work are probably looking at this going, holy shit, that looks like black mold. So people get really worried about mold, as well they should, especially people that are sensitive to it. But I'm of the belief you fix that water source of why there's water in that crawl space, and you will fix out, if you dry out your crawl space, you will fix that mold. But my lady is allergic to it. So she was super nervous about this. So I think in a different situation, she may have just terminated, but we were able to get through this. So again, we've got water in the crawl space. We've got mold on some floor joists. We have insulation that's stringy, which is also another indication of moisture. We had moisture and high levels on the floor joists, which means that mold is just going to grow and it's going to start to eat away at those floor joists and the wood. And then they used a home type dehumidifier as opposed to a commercial one. And it wasn't even plugged in. Gotta love this stuff. So that was our big item. Okay, just flip through the rest of this real quick. Again, there was a condensation line that was HVAC, which was dripping water down there, which was one of the water sources. Again, if I just remediated the mold, but I didn't fix the water source, it would just come back. So I got to figure out how's the water getting down there. And we're seeing microbial growth there, water here in the ductwork. This is telling me another story, right, about the HVAC potentially being part of that water source. If you can find a way to sometimes let the noise get away, focus on the important things, then you're usually in business, because this inspection report's not a fun one. There's water in the bathroom, on the floor, around the toilet. So water is a predominant problem in this home. Anybody ready to run? All right. So that was a good one, right? It had a lot of things to it. So how did I handle it with the agent? So I don't start slinging mud. If you guys want to read my email, but I try to, as I mentioned before, we did find quite a bit of water in the crawl space. I called her first and I gave her a heads up. I'm like, we found a little something that's going to take me a few days to kind of work through. So just heads up, Julie, we have water in the crawl space, and with that we have some mold. And she was like, holy crap, we had no idea. They had done a pre-inspection. And then I told her a little bit about my client is sensitive to the mold. And so the long and short of it is anywhere there's mold, they would like it treated and removed and some precautions put in place to prevent it from continuing to be an issue, including a better dehumidifier, repairing a few holes in the moisture barrier, repairing the HVAC condensation line, and replacing some of the affected insulation. I've included a report from Crossface Fitness. I had an additional inspector go out there that came out to take a look and make their recommendations as well. Again, trying to have a great relationship with her because she can be an asset to me during this too. So I included to her our full inspection report so she could see the things that we're asking for is not all of it, right? We had probably 80 things that came up on an inspection report, and we're going to ask for maybe 15. I also, again, did that little repair list within my home inspection report to give her pictures of what I'm getting ready to ask for. So this is what my due diligence, my DDRA looked like. I'm referring her to an addendum because I needed more space. Again, I did release the entire inspection report for them to review because it puts my ask in context. And then I tried to be very specific, have roofing specialists repair, replace damaged shingles, remove the nests, reattach. You'll see it's a lot about action. Repair loose faucet, repair handle, repair diverter, remove all microbial growth. So that was my addendum. And then I also, again, I mentioned, right, quotes. I had an HVAC guy go out there too. He didn't give me a great printed report, but it was information that I then provided to the listing agent as well. But this was the fix. How do we fix the water and fix that crawl space, which would again fix the mold? So I got a quote for this too. So that was part of my ask. So that was additional work from me. But then I am loaded for bear, right? I look like an agent that knows what I'm doing. I've also got some additional quotes, some invoices so that my asks look reasonable. Well, we didn't just pull a number out of thin air. And I will tell you, we were able to get through this deal. It was not an easy one, but we actually ended up negotiating a credit. My folks in the end wanted to be able to do the work with the qualified people that they wanted to use. So you guys just saw that invoice of $1,600. Some of the other items were extra. We were able to negotiate a $6,000 credit for my client, and we had already negotiated about a $22,000 price reduction initially because they were overpriced. So,
Hi, Pam.
yes, ma'am. Go ahead, Jess.
I'm sorry, dear. I hope I'm not jumping ahead, but with some of the repairs, like myself, not being familiar with some of the things that needed to be repaired, do you then follow up or have another inspection to make sure those things were done, or how do you normally handle that?
So in this case, we just did we just gave them, they just gave us money. But yes, if I had them do some of the repair work, if it's something significant, like a big ticket item, it may be worth having an inspector go back out to just validate that that work has been done. If it's kind of smaller things and it's, it's kind of manageable, if they send me an invoice that the work has been completed, and then I can go back out and kind of visually say, oh yeah, it looks like that's been repaired too, then we have almost two validations, right? The invoice and then me being able to check. So it really just depends. If it's small items, I probably wouldn't spend to have the inspector go back out again. But if it's something big, it may be worth it. I mean, if we're talking structural, right? I mean, I would certainly have somebody go back out there and make sure it was done right.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. All right, I hope that was helpful to kind of see, right? A kind of an example, although we're doing it kind of quick. That was a real life circumstance. So again, I will tell you, as newer agents, it will be easy to freak out on a lot of these repairs because I'm not an electrician, I'm not a plumber, But again, I also don't get my people frothed up, say, all right, all this is great information. And what we have to do now is try to figure out a solution. In my mind, everything is fixable. We just have to figure out how is it fixable and who's going to pay for it. So that I may need to call in, another specialist to help me figure out what that plan would be to get it eradicated. And then again, it gives me a price that I'm going to ask the seller to do it, right? If I'm working for a buyer. One other thing too about repairs versus a credit. I tend to like credits. And I try to really kind of encourage my people to take a credit over having the seller do repairs with some caveats. The reason why is, hey buyer, you be able to choose who you want to do all of that work, not the cheapest handyman that a seller can find, because that's what a lot of them will do. You can control, you will basically get a credit at closing. So it's just less money you have to bring. So theoretically, just budget that money to be able to take care of some of these problems, right? Caveat, if it is something major, like HVAC is just shot to hell, you've got sewage backing up in the backyard because the septic tank needs to be pumped, I may probably ask the seller to do those things because it may be more in depth once they start doing that repair. And I would rather that be the problem of the seller than the problem of my buyer down the road. Also keep in mind, contractors are really booked out right now too. So sometimes a credit, you can manage the transaction a lot easier that way. You're not dependent on waiting for a contractor to get out there to do the work and then go back out and confirm that it was done. A credit is just simpler, I will tell you. All right, so we got a couple slides we got to get through in a couple minutes. So 3 days prior to closing, you should receive the ALTA or CD from either your client or from the lender. Sometimes it's hard to have a lender send them to you nowadays. So sometimes I just have my client send it right out to me. Yeah, Joanna, I can send you a copy of the slides. I look for errors. So you want to make sure they're receiving credit for their due diligence monies, their earnest monies. Everybody always calculates their commission, which is kind of funny too. Just make sure everything makes sense, right? If there's an HOA, is it being paid? Who's paying for it? Taxes, who's getting credits, and how all that works. So just look for errors. You also need to help remind your clients to coordinate utilities. It's funny, you'll get almost to closing, people get really super excited, and then they forget to turn on the utilities. So about 3 days prior to, I always send out an email going, hey, just heads up guys, make sure you get the utilities turned on, and then here are the companies that you will need to contact. I actually have a utility spreadsheet that has, like, I work Wrightsville Beach, Carolina Beach, Wilmington. Some of those municipalities have different utility vendors. And so I just send them that spreadsheet and they can click on the tab they're buying in, and then they can, it has links to websites, it has telephone numbers, has all that too. 3 days prior to closing too is also a good time to set out any vendor list that you have, which I think is a great resource to give your clients because it shows value. A lot of times people are thinking about doing repairs, or they're thinking about doing some updates on the move in. So part of the fun, right, is to say, hey, and here's my approved vendor list there too that, have been vetted. Feel free to use whoever you want to, but if you're looking for some recommendations, here's a great list. And keep these lists as you meet great vendors, as you get your business rolling. These are the people that you want to keep in your life, right? You want them to help your clients. So keep that in mind. All right, here we go. All right, so closing table. This is going to feel really uneventful. All that hard work, and closing table is really when you're there to maybe help calm your client's nerves and make sure everything is taken care of. And it's really a celebratory time, hopefully, although I have attended some contentious ones too. It's usually just the buyer. Seller normally now comes in a couple days prior to and signs their portion. So it's usually just kind of fun, right? You, the agent, your clients, and then the attorney. And most attorneys do a pretty good job on trying not to over explain what they're signing, but to give them enough so they feel comfortable there too. And I recommend a closing gift and, and make it a nice experience. One thing to note though, keys may not be readily available. And that may be something that you have to set expectations with your client too. And so, how the closing is going to work is the attorney is going to make sure that all the funds are there, right, from the lender and any portion that you needed to bring. And they'll want to reconcile that and make sure that they have the right funds from both parties. And then they also commonly will do like a really quick title check just to make sure no liens have been placed on the property prior to recording. It normally just doesn't take them that long, but they'll do that little check, and then they will record the property at the Register of Deeds. Most of them are done electronically now, and so you can usually get it recorded within an hour or two. Just depends on how bad the counties are backed up. So I normally like to tell people, like, hey, we're going to try to record as fast as possible, but there are a few other little hoops the attorney's got to jump through just to make sure everything is recorded nicely. I have the keys. I normally like to get them when I do the walkthrough. I have them on me. I ask the listing agent if that's okay. I'm going to hold on to them. And then why don't you guys go ahead and get some coffee, get some lunch, take a deep breath, and then I'll reach out to you and I'll meet you at the house whenever we get access to the property. And then I'll hand over the keys to you there. And as long as they know that that's going to happen and they don't have a moving truck sitting there waiting, breathing down their neck, they're normally okay with that. Some possibilities, if you try to close at the end of the day, you may not get recorded that day. So I like to try to choose a morning time or at least 12 noon closing. I don't like 3 o'clock closings because if it takes you to 4 o'clock to do all the paperwork and we're missing anything, the attorney is not closing that day. And so then your clients may be sitting in a hotel room. All right, and beyond. So the reason I want to say this is know that this last little piece and how it all ends is really important to help you get what we all want ultimately is a referral-based business. Make sure you put people in your database and you have them on a program where you stay connected to them so that you congratulate them on their 1-year anniversary. All these little things, stay in contact with them. You do want your referrals, you really do. I will also tell you it's the crazy that you know. And what I mean by that is sometimes the internet leads, they're just not people that you have any experience with. You don't know them. Commonly, if your client refers you to a friend, usually pretty damn similar, right? So if this is somebody you loved and had a great time with, and if they refer you to other people, they're probably pretty similar to them. So I like that. I prefer that. Do client events, value a CRM. And one other thing I will mention there too, it's a great opportunity to ask for a referral. That referral will ask for a referral too, but ask for a review or a testimonial. I've been on the process the last couple of days of trying to do some of that because I had not done a good job of that from the beginning. So maybe, right around the time you're closing, like maybe the day or two before, it's like, hey, I really enjoyed working with you guys. You've been a pleasure. If you wouldn't mind just filling out a really quick testimonial or review for me using these links, I would super appreciate it. And the reason why it's great to do that probably after due diligence, but right before you close, is because they're still really excited. They have gotten through the bulk of the transaction. They're more likely to do it because you've been prompting them for action, right? So they get an email from you and they do something about it. If you wait till after you close, unfortunately, you've given them what they were trying to buy and they've moved on, right? They're moving into their house, they're painting and all that stuff too. You can still get them, but I find that you don't get them as frequently as if you strategically ask maybe a couple of days prior to closing. So that's my tip there too. Well, y'all, it has been a whirlwind. I'm sorry I had a little technical difficulties earlier and you guys weren't able to see the comps, but I hope this class was really good. Next week, we'll do working with sellers, part 1 and part 2. So it'll be again Monday and Thursday, 11. And yeah, we'll go from there. I hope everybody has a great rest of the day. Thanks, guys.